Shadows
it
over
out.
here. Lady of
So
Shadows.
we have Lady of Shadows here, and she's gonna tell us about the Cajun people. I've never heard of it before, but I don't know if you guys heard of it. But this is a real called the Cajun people.
So dealing with the Cajun people. So they started from France about 1600s. It's a little bit into, I don't know exact dates, but it's about that time because they went to Canada, and so they went to Nova Scotia. So Nova Scotia is like I think it's like it's almost like a peninsula where it's at. I don't think it's an island because it's like kind of towards the bottom of the tip of Canada. You'd have to see it on the map, but that's straight. But anyway, they lived there
Well, make sure you send it. Yeah.
for a little while, but then because it was French at the first, right? Because they had French people there, French settlement. So that's what made it different because of the fact that it was French, right? So they were able to communicate with the people, and they went there. So after a little while, they so the English came in at some point, and they forced them to leave. They took them all, and I'll tell you where they ended up, but they took them all in a boat. I think it's mostly in a boat, and took them from there, and then brought them down where Louisiana is now. Now at that time, the Louisiana was owned by the French, but it was first in the Spanish hands because the Spanish were there. Well, Spanish were there in the United States before everybody else. And I don't remember how much land they, like how far, because the French had it all the way from where Louisiana is now, and it went all the way up the Mississippi River, all the way to the top of the United States, the whole big piece of land in the middle. So they were doing that. So they had this area to send them, but yeah, it was Spanish and then the French, and then so they brought them. I think probably around 1700s or maybe early 1700s, I think. So they brought them to Louisiana, in the south part, like the swamps and all that kind of stuff. And it gets cold, but not like cold up there. But they were used to, because up north they were like trappers. They would trap animals and skin and skin the animals. They would eat the meat. They would use every part of the animal. So that was like they were fairly poor people. So they just used everything they could to make whatever they had to do. So at that point, so then they send them to Louisiana, which is now Louisiana, and it was like that for a while until the Louisiana Purchase, and then because they were along the coast, Louisiana mostly south. So, or they called it the area that were they're known for, and the names. So, like in Canada, the city that they were in, the most famous one was Acadie, and it's like Acadie in English or something. So, the people from there were Acadiens, or Acadian in English, right? So then when they moved down to Louisiana, they took the word Acadien and shorten and make it Cajun, but which was Cajun. That's how the word Cajun came about.
Gotcha.
So it had a different. I think that would be a word etymology. I had a book. I took a class on that. But yeah. So. So then Louisiana Purchase came along in I think 1803 somewhere between 1803 and 1809. I don't remember all the history of it, but when that came in, the British came in, and well, not the British. So I guess the Americans came in because at that point we had the United States starting the 13 colonies, and they were already moving across the United States, going west, warring with people to get what we have now as the United States. Because at one point, half of the United States was from Mexico.
Right.
So
Okay.
it's been in a lot of hands in certain areas. So, all right. So you got, well, there's something interesting too about the language because so a lot of the language is mixed up. There's words like mixed up from but old Spanish. So like the Spanish that were first there in Louisiana, which is Spanish from Spain Spanish.
Okay.
Which is, yeah. Some people say they speak Spanish in the other countries, but a lot of them call it Castellano, like Castilian Spanish. But I don't know.
Okay.
That's a long story. Anyway, that's a whole nother ballgame, that one. So anyway, but so when they were in the south part of Louisiana too, one of my ancestors, and somewhere in the 1700s or 1800s, they had Spaniards that came from Spain, but at that point it was probably still owned by the French at that point. So they had these Spaniards that came in to work in the salt mine. There's a salt mine in the south part of Louisiana, and so they came work in the salt mine. So they ended up marrying some Cajun women, I guess, and they ended up living their life there. So they probably ended up at least speaking French with Spanish. So they mixed up some words, right? We have some that, but influenced from before. There's a word in Louisiana that we call lagniappe, which is spelled Lagniappe, and it means a little bit extra.
Gotcha.
But it comes from the old Spanish word la ñapa.
Okay.
And ñapa means a little bit extra.
Gotcha.
So they took that word la, because it's la is the, it's like the little bit extra or something. So la ñapa became la ñap in the Cajun French. So that was a created word in the Cajun French.
Gotcha.
So I'm sure they have many more. So my life goal study, because, well, a problem with the French too is because they had a lot of French speaking people. My parents' generation, that was probably their first language, because my grandparents, that was their first language, was Cajun French. So it wasn't English, because their parents were all Cajun people. They were all, and they didn't live that far from each other, where their families were from. They didn't live very far. So yeah, my mom and dad, I mean, so that's how they met. I think she was 14 or something. He was 16. But
okay, cool.
But yeah, they're all, so the French people, the French language, or the Cajun French language kept up. But then when my parents' generation went to school, they punished them for speaking French on campus. So they stopped. They didn't teach my generation. So some like, I have one of my good friends knows, because he was raised, I mean, his grandmother took care of him a lot. She only spoke French. So that was it, or it was easier French because that's what she knew first. So some of us in my generation, but not all. My parents would speak Cajun French when they didn't want us to know what they were talking about. So, and then in school, so they tried in school to bring that back. When we were in the second grade, they had these French teachers from France, and they had this, it was an agreement with Acadia or whatever in that area, or Nova Scotia or somewhere around there, or Quebec or whatever. Quebec is another city, all Canada. They probably decided that they got together with that area and Louisiana and France, and it was called Codafil. I don't know what it's an acronym for something. So they decided to make us take French from second grade to fifth grade, thinking that we were going to absorb it and be able to learn the French. So we keep our heritage,
right,
because they pretty much made us lose our heritage, what they did to our parents. So then, so with that, they were horrible teachers. I hated them with passion. I had really long hair, and one of them, I felt violated because she took my long hair, and stuffed it in my shirt because I was doing this with my hair because some kid threw a spitball in my hair.
Wow.
And so I hated the French. I mean, that was second grade, so I had to take French in second, third, fourth, fifth, and after that, we could decide what we wanted.
Right.
Well, actually, yeah, because sixth grade, I don't know if they had French, and I'm not sure. But in high school, they did. But I decided to take Spanish instead of French in high school because of that. I chose the language, another language over my supposedly native language or whatever.
Right.
Because I didn't like the French teachers. So that was my story.
Wow.
But yeah, so they have a big Cajun. So another thing too, because they were French in that area, they're very Catholic, like the Spanish. Spaniards were very Catholic. So in Louisiana, we have parishes because of the Catholic Church instead of counties. So only state with parishes instead of counties.
Wow.
Everything else is. But it has some good and bad history. But I mean, of course, because in New Orleans, the port. In New Orleans, that's the Mississippi River. Pretty sure it's Mississippi River goes through there, I think. Yeah, I believe so. I'd have to look at a map. I'll add you some maps so you can.
Gotcha.
But so yeah, that was the big port, and so they had a lot of slave trade in that area.
Right.
So that's their bad history, and the plantations. I don't know what they, because like the Spaniards didn't. Maybe eventually they might have had some black slaves, the Spaniards, or from Africa, but most of them they took the Indians. So in the history, the Spaniards made the indigenous people, like the Aztecs and the Maya and all that, they're slave people pretty much. So and made them learn to be Catholic.
Wow.
They forced Catholicism on the indigenous people.
History.
And they killed a lot of them because of smallpox and whatever diseases they got.
History.
But yeah, I know a lot about the history. So I mean, I have the Spanish connection and I have the French connection.
Wow.
It's a movie called French. Well, I'm packing up because I want to go home because I miss my Cajun culture.
So you're going back.
And the food. And the food and the people and everything is nice and calm and quiet.
Nice.
It's, and well, in some of the cities that are bigger, it's a little crazy, but in the little towns, my sister lives in a little town, so. And it happens to have the history that they had the graveyard with we saw the Spaniards. That were our ancestors, because we were doing a genealogy research.
Gotcha.
So she's a history teacher. So, and my youngest sister, one of my youngest sisters, is also doing it too. They had done it as well. So we got we like the history a lot.
Right.
And I happen to like the Spanish part because I teach Spanish.
Right.
because I decided to take Spanish instead of French
Right. Right.
in high school. I took 4 years of Spanish in high school. I had A's
Wow.
all the way through. I excel in language.
Wow.
I took a French class too. So yeah, eventually I did take French in college again, like
Nice.
first and second semester, and I got all my notes still. Matter of fact, which I'm keeping.
Nice.
And I'm learning other languages, so German too, and Igbo from Nigeria in Africa.
Gotcha.
Hi.
History on Cajun people.
Yeah.
Peace.